think this is working. Okay. This is my second attempt at video log again for this week because apparently YouTube is not a good fan of BB Learn. I'd like to talk about eligibility today, obviously, because that's our week. Starting off with a recap of our guest speaker last week, I thought Jamie was a really great person to hear from. Obviously, I've known her for almost 3 years, so I know that she's really good at her job and really cares about student athletes and keeping them able to not only play but also be students. Because that's really, as a major focus at Drexel, is academics first, and that shows in our success in the classroom for student athletes compared to our success on the field. It often is much better in the classroom. Not that that's to show a lack of effort to win, but it's to show that the focus is really in the right place. A lot of things that Jamie talked about and provided to us in terms of information was really important because she was able to, and obviously this is her job, to pick out things from, I'm sure, that are in the manual but are in convoluted sentences and paragraphs that were important to me to understand as somebody who wants to work in college athletics, or just to somebody who's generally interested in college sports. It was good to know about the growing cumulative GPA requirement. What's different for Drexel because we're a co-op school and because we're 5-year. What changes come about in terms of requirements as you get later and later and later into your time at school, in terms of your class standing, things of that nature. It was just good to have that pulled out of that brutal thing that's called the NCAA manual and really given to us on a silver platter by Jamie. So then on to this week's eligibility topics. Two things that really jumped out at me in terms of supplemental materials were the flyer, eligibility flyer that I guess goes out to high school students who are prospective D1 or D2 athletes, and also the guide for incoming student athletes 2014-2015. I thought was really interesting because it was really big and it was also impactful, and educational, and something important for student athletes, their families, and universities, and their counselors, and their high school administrators, and such to understand. Because NCAA rules are very difficult to understand, can sometimes contradict, can sometimes really go against what us as normal human beings or Americans would do because we're in a capitalistic society. So it's really important to have a type of funnel to bring out the important information, and I think that guide did it just as much for student athletes as for families as for other parties that are interested in their well-being. Secondly, the flyer I thought was really good. The whole idea of a checklist I think is important. I do this all the time in my student leadership experience, or in what I'm involved in terms of student leadership, giving myself a checklist, giving my colleagues and anybody else that I work with a checklist, because I think can be so beneficial for just not only staying organized, but just understanding where you are, where you need to be to get to what you want to do. So those three things are really important. In terms of discussion board posts for this week, eligibility was obviously the hot topic. I thought it was really interesting that we talked about eligibility the week after the Weinstein report came out from University of North Carolina. I've been exposed to this probably on a deeper level than most other people since the report started breaking 2 years ago about these paper classes and the Afro-American Studies department. And it just is really disheartening to see a program, and I grew up a North Carolina basketball fan, so it's really disheartening to see such a storied, successful, often considered super ethically sound program just be, accused of and proven to have been involved in such a really heinous misuse of power and heinous dishonesty. It just was horrible. And I'm a major critic of the NCAA in a lot of ways. I would call myself a reformist in some senses. But when it comes to just genuine academic fraud, that's not NCAA. That's really just an institution who clearly does not care about their reputation. Because you are a place of higher education. You're a place that grants degrees. You're not, you might pop out Michael Jordan. Sure, that's great. Congratulations, the best basketball player of all time. But you have a million alumni. So you need to remember that you're giving many more certificates, many more diplomas than you're given basketball sneakers. So, I really hope that other schools don't have things of this nature, or at least of this level. I'm sure that it happens elsewhere. I think it's silly to assume that there aren't places where staff are writing essays, or forcing and placing students into certain majors just because they think it's easier for them. But this is just UNC is just a whole nother level, and I think it's really atrocious. I hope that I imagine there's going to be a ton of backlash, or damages done to UNC, whether it is from academic oversight, or the Department of Education. That's a possibility, considering the fact that now it would seem as though they knowingly gave out diplomas to students who they knew did not fulfill requirements for graduation, and then also from the NCAA, obviously. So I don't really know. I think it's unfortunate because, similar to Penn State, in the fact that student athletes at Penn State who had nothing to do with the culture that was created when football has too much power in Joe Paterno and Jerry Sandusky, and that group created such a culture. And sure, the student athletes perpetuated it, and also bathed in it. But the student athletes for the 2 following years did not do anything. The 2 years after the hammer came down on them had no exposure to that. So it's just, there had no part in that. So it's unfortunate to have seen them be sanctioned because of it. So I'm happy that the NCAA has lightened up on Penn State. Now, looking at UNC, there have been athletes, and there will be athletes who are harmed by this that had nothing to do with, or didn't even know probably that they were committing academic fraud. I think it's a horrible, misuse of time and funds, and just a really bad thing to do, not only for your institution but for individuals. There are students who were getting an A in a class they didn't deserve, and had they actually learned or had the opportunity to learn, maybe they would have had value or gained value from the class. So I hope that in the future they see that as a possibility at UNC, and stop this fake educating, which I'm sure it's over now, but and I hope other schools learn from it as well. That's it.